Hey, what is going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and today I'm going to be covering the Saturn for the first time in a while. I know it's been a few years since I've covered this system, but I dug my Saturn back out recently, and I was having some fun with it here, so I decided to look into updating and trying out a few things. One of which was a piece of content I had covered before called Pseudo Saturn. Now, for anybody who does not know, typically on a Sega Saturn, if you want to play an original imported disc, you'd need to have an action replay cartridge or something comparable. If you want to play a CDR-based backup, you'd need to have a mod chip or do a swap trick of some kind. Having the cartridge alone wasn't enough, until Pseudo Saturn came about. Now, it did end up removing some functionality from action replay cartridges, but the biggest benefit is if you flashed a cartridge with Pseudo Saturn, it allowed you to not only play original games, but also CDR-based backups without having to do a swap trick and without having to physically install a mod chip in your Saturn. So it was a really nice improvement. Now, there have been several updates to it in the form of Pseudo Saturn Kai. I'm not going to be covering the initial installation process because I have a video covering that already, and the process is the exact same if you're doing a fresh install. I'm specifically going to be covering how to update this. So to update this, you're going to need a few things. First, you'll of course need your working Sega Saturn console. You're also going to need your Pseudo Saturn or Pseudo Saturn Kai cartridge, and you're going to need a blank CD so we can burn off an update disc. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and move over to our PC to get started on that process. So the links for these will be down below in the description, but the first link that's going to be related to this will be the Pseudo Saturn Kai website for downloading this. Now, what you can do when you come here is you can read all the features and such and check all of this out. I'm not going to be going into major detail with all of this here, and if you're a person who might have a RIA or Phoebe ODE device, this install is not going to be covering that specifically. You're going to have to do things a little bit differently on that side. I don't have either of those, so I'm not going to be covering it here. But either way, what you can do is come down here, and when you go to your downloads, just download the latest release of Pseudo Saturn Kai. It's going to be in a 7-zip file. Since this is a 7-zip archive, you can also download and install the latest build of 7-zip in case you don't have it. And finally, if you don't have any burning software for your CDR, I'm going to recommend ImageBurn. The link for this again will be down below in the description. So there we go. At this point, you should have ImageBurn installed, 7-zip installed if you needed them, and Pseudo Saturn Kai. When you have this archive, you just need to right-click it. You can extract it into its own directory using whatever you're going to use here, and here's the directory that it extracted to. Inside of here, there's going to be a lot of different files as well as some readmes if you want to check them out further, but in short, we're just going to need the Pseudo Saturn Kai SDM flasher. You're going to have a Q file and you're going to have an ISO file. You can use either of these two, it's going to accomplish the same thing when you burn it. So once you open up ImageBurn, you want to go to Write Image File to Disk, and make sure you have your burner selected. Now you want to come over here when you put in your CDR, and you want to find the slowest burn speed available, and you want to set it to that. So in this case, it would be 16x, for example. We're going to burn at the slowest speed we can. Now come up here and click Browse for a file to find the ISO. Inside of here, grab the Q file. If the Q file doesn't work for whatever reason, you can grab the ISO file, but grabbing the Q file should work just fine. And at this point, you can simply click on this button here to begin writing to your disk. Now, I've preemptively burned off a copy of this disk, so once you have your disk already burned and ready to go over to your Saturn with your Pseudo Saturn or Pseudo Saturn Kai cartridge, as well as your update disk. Once you have your disk burned and your Pseudo Saturn cartridge in your Saturn, turn on your Saturn with the Pseudo Saturn cartridge and make sure it works. Once it does, make sure you pop in your update disk and boot this up like any other game. So I have the update disk in, I'm just going to press start, and as you can see, it's booting up just fine. So here, we're going to come to the Saturn Save Data Manager. Now just follow the on-screen instructions by pressing the right trigger on your controller, go down to firmware flasher, press A, and you should get a little something like this. You should have values for flash vendor ID and flash device ID. Both of mine are unknown, but they are in green, which is a good sign. Now, I have had this asked before. Some people have reflashed their Action Replay cartridges, and they've asked, can I reflash that to the original state? Well, yes, you can. If you have a matching Action Replay that you can find on here, you can actually reflash it. So, for example, since I know I've repurposed an Action Replay 2.02 cartridge, I could just take one of these files here and reflash it to its original state. But we're not here for that. We're here to update Pseudo Saturn. So as you all could see, I was using Pseudo Saturn 0.832, and I want to update to the latest version of Pseudo Saturn Kai, which should be up at the top. So you might be able to take the full version depending on how big your cartridge storage is. The only way we can really check is by checking it. So first, just grab your update file, press the A button when you select it. Now it is going to give you a warning here, and once you understand it, make sure you continue on with the process. It is going to now say reading from CD-ROM, and it's going to act like the console is frozen, and I promise you it's not. Just let it do its thing. Now as you can see, we got a very clear message back, and it says firmware doesn't fit in flash memory because this is a 1 megabyte flash file, while I have a 256 kilobyte cartridge, which is fine. And if you get that in this case, you can just press start, go back to restart flasher by pressing A, and you have to use the light version. So go ahead, highlight whatever firmware you're going to use. Just like before, you're going to need to continue on here, and it is going to act like it's frozen, but just wait a few seconds. So now we have a compatible file that we can flash to our cartridge. Now this can damage your cartridge, so be sure you want to continue on with this. Make sure you do not lose power to your console, and once you're ready to continue, go ahead, hit the combination to continue, and put your controller down. This process is going to take a few moments. It's going to now slowly erase your cartridge, and then it's going to flash it with the latest update. Now this process will take a minute or two. It's first just going to erase your cartridge entirely. And once it has successfully erased your cartridge, it's now going to begin flashing over the firmware update. Again, just let it do its thing. Once that's all complete, you can just follow the instructions and press start to exit. And now at this point, I'd recommend going to do a system reset. And when your system restarts itself, go ahead and remove the update disk from your system. We're not going to need that now. Now when your system boots back up, you should come into the latest version of Pseudo Saturn Kai. Congratulations then. You are going to need to press one of the arrow buttons on the D-pad quickly, or else you are going to automatically load up a game. You see, one nice thing about this is if you just let this run and you have a disk in, within 5 seconds it automatically boots up whatever disk is in the drive. So you really have no user intervention at this point. So just a little bit of a walkthrough here. First of all, with CWX and JHL, these are just two different methods of booting up a game disk. The best thing to do is just use automatic. Automatic should pick the best setting for your game and launch it, but if for some reason it doesn't, you can try either of these two options manually, but most of the time you should just need to do automatic. Now you could go down to the main menu, and of course there's start game, but there's also settings here where you can change these settings here if you'd like. There's also system info where you can check this out. Credits, of course, which we can check out here. So there we go. And once we get out of that, we can also exit this if we want, but that's not what we want to do here. So the other thing that you can do is if you go to start game, make sure you have a game disk in, and you can press X to load up cheat codes, which this is really cool. So you can press X, it should automatically detect whatever game you popped in. Mine is of course Nights into Dreams, and at this point you can just select whichever cheats you would like. So of course there is some information down below. There is A to start the game, X to select certain cheats, Y to select all of them or unselect all of them. really doing whatever you want to do on here. So for this, I'm going to do unlimited time, unlimited speed thrusts, unlimited blue orbs, sure, why not? And then when you're ready to start the game, you can just press the A or C button to start. Alright, so of course this game is a bit of a trip, but as you can see, the cheats that we were trying to put in seem to have taken effect here, just from the small bit that I'm able to see right here. So now let's go ahead and restart the console yet again. Now I've just popped in my Japanese copy of Virtua Fighter 2, but if you want to start the game without cheats, that's fine. You can just pop the disc in, either select automatic manually or don't touch it, wait 5 seconds, and as you can see, it's booted up the game just fine. And of course, as I've said, since this is Pseudo Saturn, you're able to use this with not only import discs, but also CDR-based backups as well too. You do not need to use any type of swap trick, and you do not need to have a mod chip installed in your system. So this should really be about all you need at this point if you're just wanting to play a few disc-based games on here. So there we go, we're about done at this point. Congratulations, that has been the update and kind of walkthrough of Pseudo Saturn Kai. Now even if there is a later update of this, the process is really going to be the exact same. You're going to download the latest update file, burn it to a disk, and flash it in this manner. So even if there is a higher version than what I have on screen here, the process is still going to be the same. Anyways, this is Mr. Mario signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, a like would absolutely be appreciated, and if you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too.